What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week on YouTube. Plenty to get to, starting with the U.S. men's national team's loss to Germany. And I want to frame this game in the context of the World Cup and expectations heading into Copa America and the 2026 World Cup at home. Because there's only so much you can take from friendlies. But this was the one opportunity the U.S. men's national team had to play elite opposition from a talent standpoint before Copa America. And that first half looked an awful lot like the World Cup. And I mean that as a compliment. And this is the one thing I have been consistent on. There are plenty of things to criticize Greg Berhalter for. But the reality is that the U.S. outplayed England and got eliminated by the Netherlands in a game where they played well enough and just fell apart defensively on a couple occasions, and that decided the game. Not that they deserved to win, because they made those defensive mistakes. But they were not overmatched in any way in that game. In that World Cup, they looked like they belonged with some of the best teams in the world. And from a talent standpoint, I would argue they're basically there. One of the 10 to 15 most talented teams in the world. Just look at this game, for example. These two teams in the starting lineup had the same number of players currently winning a top 5 European league. If you replace Germany's Bayer Leverkusen players in the starting lineup with their Bayern ones, the number is still the same. And yeah, that's cheating a little bit because, for example, Florian Balogun is currently winning Ligue 1 with Monaco. I'm not saying these teams are equal in terms of talent, but the gap is not that big. And that's what made that second half so disappointing, because the first half looked like two fairly evenly matched teams that the U.S. was generally able to dictate the terms of the game, play it the way they wanted to, and Germany had some moments, got the equalizer, but it never felt like the U.S. was out of place or was struggling. It's just a game that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, because it's pretty evenly balanced and it's two really good teams. Second half, completely different story. And that was what was so disappointing about this is your one opportunity before Copa America to continue this confidence, to continue to grow the belief, to continue to prove to everybody this team is good enough to play with the best teams in the world. This team is in position to go make a run at winning the 2026 World Cup. Because I firmly believe we are at that point talent-wise, where there is enough to say, at home, that is a possibility. That they can enter in the contender territory. Not one of the favorites, but that contender tier, when I break teams down into tiers for that 2026 World Cup. And to get played off the field like that by a Germany team that obviously has struggled mightily. Julian Nagelsmann comes in, trying to get everybody acquainted with his system. Incredibly disappointing. There's no way around it. Now, it's one half of a friendly without Tyler Adams. So you just can't overreact to it. But it would have been really nice to have seen a really good 90-minute performance, because I had a whole speech ready. And I can't give that speech after the second half. On the Tyler Adams point, one, yes, he is that important to this team. That got proven again. That is one of the things you can take away from this game, because so many of their issues were getting played through too easily in the midfield. Yunus Musa in particular not necessarily being familiar with his responsibilities, playing as a deep-lying midfielder as opposed to more of an 8 with Weston McKennie, which is where he's at his best. Not having a player of Tyler Adams' profile out there, a center-back pairing that hasn't spent much time together. Some of this stuff you can't do anything about if you're Greg Berhalter. But there is one thing you could have done, and that's played Leonard Maloney. I was incredibly disappointed he didn't get the opportunity to audition for that role, because Yunus Musa is not a 6. In my mind. Or at least your best team does not have Yunus Musa playing the 6 if Tyler Adams is not available. This was a golden opportunity to go give Leonard Maloney, who has been so good for Heidenheim, and starting as a 6 in the Bundesliga, an opportunity to go really make a case to be the second number 6 on these squads moving forward. It's not the only opportunity, but it was right there because Tyler Adams is not here. And Berhalter decided not to do it. Tactically, they paid for it. And I also just think fundamentally it was the wrong decision. I really, really wanted to see Leonard Maloney and what he could have done if he started this game. But Berhalter made his decision. And you saw the same defensive breakdowns, not to the same degree, in terms of the ones against the Netherlands were worse. But there were so many similarities to the World Cup where you look and you go, they're right there. They're playing. They don't look overmatched. They look like they belong. They're dictating terms of the game. A couple moments that they need to clean up defensively, and they're right there. We're talking about a team that can make the quarterfinals, make the semifinals. Except that second half, that was the first time since before the World Cup they just looked outmatched and lost. Once those 2 goals went in early in the second half, they had no answer. And so, ultimately, there's just no way around it. It's incredibly disappointing. It's also one friendly. You can't read too much into it. It's not worth overreacting. But this was the chance to continue to build that confidence, to continue to prove to people you really are at that level. Because I believe they are. This was your chance going into Copa America to go, we belong on the field with the best teams in the world. And this one game obviously doesn't completely take that away. But it would have been really nice to see that reinforced after a good first half and after such a good showing at the World Cup. Now, the other part of this is that Christian Pulisic scored a marvelous goal. And that first 45 minutes might have been the best I've ever seen Christian Pulisic. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration. But the runs he was making, the positions he got himself in, he had the offside, the potential penalty. He was just in the right spot all the time. And then that goal doesn't happen if he's not playing consistently and playing well for AC Milan. That's the kind of goal that you score when you're just not thinking about it because you're in really good form. He's in the best form of his career, arguably. It's not a coincidence. This is always the player Christian Pulisic has been. And I got real frustrated when he was sitting on the bench at Chelsea and you're talking about his future of can he cut it at the highest level? Yes, he is that good. He's the same player he was at Chelsea. The difference is he's getting to play every week. He's not at a club that is going to continue to bring in other players and that if one manager changes, you're done for, potentially, if that manager just doesn't gel with you for whatever reason. And he's healthy. His failure at Chelsea was not because he wasn't good enough. And he's proven that to you right now with what he's doing at AC Milan and what he's doing for the US men's national team. So I wanted to mention that very quickly. And then, of course, NWSL Decision Day. I want to touch on some of the highlights as well. Plenty of interesting things happening. First off, San Diego Wave clinch the Shield. Congratulations to them. Take care of business. Get the win that they need. And some help from the Portland Thorns, who give up 5 goals in their loss to Angel City and allow San Diego to claim that first spot, the bye, the Shield, regular season, all of that good stuff. So congratulations, San Diego Wave. On the Angel City part, I'll go there next since I already mentioned it. I said this a while back. I don't know if I talked about it in that video, but I definitely wrote it in my 5 things from the week. That win over San Diego came at the perfect time where there were just enough games remaining that if Angel City could turn it around and build off of that win, they were going to have a shot to make the playoffs. And what do you know? They did just enough. They gave themselves an opportunity on the final day of the season, and then they went and scored 5 goals. And they needed them for goal difference. And so here they are in the playoffs for the first time in club history. Sydney Leroux scores a overhead / bicycle kick. I mean, it was a sight to behold what Angel City did on decision day. Really cool story, so congratulations to them. 2 other big things I want to talk about briefly here. Trinity Rodman gets a red card with a game tied 0-0, and both teams fighting for their playoff lives in the Washington Spirit North Carolina Courage game. These are the red cards I just have very little patience for, to be quite honest. I don't think it was malicious or that Trinity Rodman went to go take out Denise O'Sullivan. I think it was just frustration. But this is where I take issue with people saying referees are deciding games. No, Trinity Rodman made a decision to open herself up to a red card because that was completely unnecessary, nowhere near the ball. She went down Denise O'Sullivan's leg. I mean, it looked nasty. It was nasty. To me, that's a red. And at least you're giving the referee the opportunity to give you a red. That was not some massive injustice. That was just a really, really bad moment from Trinity Rodman. And then immediately Washington gives up a goal. They try and create some chances, but they don't get the result they need. That combined with everything else that happened means they're not going to the playoffs. Who knows how that game ends if Trinity Rodman stays on the field? And she was clearly very, very emotional leaving the field. But it's a very powerful lesson. You just have to be emotionally, mentally strong enough not to lash out like that. I know she was frustrated with what had happened just before, and she just makes a really bad decision that really hurt her team. And that's those ones you just got to take accountability for. I will not go make excuses about referees and all of that kind of stuff. It was just a really, really poor choice that Trinity Rodman made, and hopefully that becomes a valuable lesson she learns for the rest of her career and is able to come back next year as a motivated, more mature player who learns from that lesson. And then finally, wasn't looking so great for OL Reign at halftime. And then Megan Rapinoe scores 2 times in the first 6 or so minutes of the second half. Almost identical goals. Perfectly placed. Final regular season game. Playoffs on the line. It hasn't been the best season for Megan Rapinoe. Obviously, the disappointment of the penalty miss at the World Cup. But she finally gets her moment in her final regular season game. 2 really, really good goals. She helps lift OL Reign into the playoffs, and they actually get to host a game courtesy of their win over the Chicago Red Stars. So, of course, somehow, someway, Megan Rapinoe delivers for her team and keeps her career alive for at least a few more days and gets to play one more game in front of her home fans. That is all for this edition of the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.